Okay, guys. I was recording this video for like the last month about rebuilding this motor. It's been going so poorly, so I'm just starting from scratch. I've made a lot of mistakes, run into a lot of really big roadblocks. Let me get you. Got the motor back from Powder Coat a while ago. It looks amazing, as you can see. There's the right side. There's more stuff under there. There's the stator side. It looks amazing. And it is amazing. They did a fantastic job. There's the color for the cases. Ran into a lot of issues. Pressed all the bearings in. That went fine. Note on that, you need to have the markings, the labels on the bearings all face up, so you can see for future reference what number bearing it is. All the bearings are numbered with like a 4-digit number, and then that's referred to in the service manual. It's a little harder to find when you're the bearing number, like the 4-digit number, when you're ordering it from like Rocky Mountain or Motorsport, but it is there. So then I pressed in this crank, and then I went to put in the water pump slash balancer shaft. You need to put these in together. Thing number one, you need to put these in together. You need to mesh them together, and you need to time them. And to time them, you see you have this mark and this mark. These need to be flat in line with each other. And then additionally, when these are in line with each other, you have that dot on the gear and then that little tab on the case. Those also need to be in line with each other. And when all of that is lined up, then you press it in. Presses in very easy. Freeze this. Didn't have to freeze that. Heat the bearing up a little bit, not too much, and it should all slip right in. Or I used the old crank bolt for the flywheel, as well as a really big socket and a really big washer, which I don't have on hand to show you. And that was my makeshift crank puller. Pulled it right in. I also have this on the back side. They say that you need a special flywheel puller for that, or flywheel holder to tighten this. It has two little flats. If you have a big enough adjustable, you can just use those flats to torque your bolt down. It's like 120 foot-pounds or something. Don't quote me on that. And I do also have a titanium bolt on the end now, as well as titanium flywheel bolts. Moving into here, took this all apart. If you don't have to, don't do that. Some pro tips are your thrust washers. I think there's 3 of them total. Those are not even. Basically, if you have one side of the washer here and one side of the washer here, the edge of it will be slanted, not square. And basically, the slanted side needs to be going like this. So basically, the smaller face of the washer needs to be on the thrust side of the load all the time. And that's very important. I don't know why, but just make sure that you realize what you're doing. I've got some Honda M77 assembly paste to put this all together. I don't know if that's going to work or if it's just going to grenade my motor immediately. Went down to the dealer. That's what they told me I needed. I bought 2 of them. We've also got all the bearings on the other side pressed in. That's not bad at all. But again, make sure that you freeze everything and then heat up the case right before you drop them in. Some of them will need some love taps. A lot of them will just drop in. And then you have dowel pin here, and then you actually have an oil passage, which is called an orifice 2mm right there with its own O-ring. And that is obviously an oil passage. This motor uses a lot of these, and they're sneaky. You can miss them, and you can miss the O-rings, and then you have a bad day. Where I started having serious trouble with this motor is right here. This is the journal for the gear shift drum bearing. And I didn't order one because, let me flip this back. On any part schematic for the TRX 700 you look at, that bearing does not show up. And I looked for 2 hours on several different websites. You can look at gear shift drum assembly, transmission. You can look at the crankcase. You can look at anything. It's not on there. Even in the service manual, it's not even on the main diagram for bearing placement. It is in its own little subsection down at the bottom of the page. I completely missed it when I was taking this motor apart and putting it back together. And to get that bearing out, you need to weld it and pull it out because there's no way to get a puller on it at all. There's no meat there. So we had to weld it and pull it out. So to pull it out, you need to destroy it. It's not reusable. And then we were just pulling all the bearings out. And so I didn't even know I didn't have another one of these. In my head, I was like, yeah, I have like 6 or 7 needle bearings sitting in a box right now. One of them's going to have to work for that. It doesn't. Honda does not make it. NTN is the bearing supplier they made the bearings for Honda. They will not respond to you if you email them asking for one. So I went to, I think, 123 Bearing, who is one of their bigger suppliers. They do not have one. They contacted everyone that they have contact with. They don't have one. I went to, Applied Industries or something. In person, went to a bearing supplier. They told me to screw. Went to Napa, who obviously told me to screw because it's not their job. There is a single post on a single forum on club700xx.com that some random guy says, hey, KTM, of all people, made a bearing that fits. Yeah, KTM. They, in like 2009, I think they're 525XC, their four-wheeler, just randomly happened to use a different needle bearing with the same measurements. So this one is inside of a cup, like it's in a shield. I don't even have it to show you, but it looks like a normal bearing, whereas the KTM bearing is not inside of a shield. I don't really think it's going to matter. I don't give a shit at this point. It's a 14 by 18 by 10 needle bearing. This fits in. It's got a tiny bit of play, but I think that's just the cage wiggling back and forth. I think the pins are pretty tight. And then it is the right length as well. And then it also fits on our shift drum just fine. So that is the one way to replace this bearing. And it is a little bit of a headache to get. If you find the part number, it's in that Club 700XX post. I will post it I will post a link to it. It usually takes like a week to get here. I overnighted it for like $30-something shipping. It's an $8 bearing, so I'm losing my mind here. You cannot get the OEM Honda bearing. You cannot get the NTN bearing. Beyond that, right now, what I need to do, we have to so before you put this back together, when you take your motor apart, the shift drum will probably come out with the shift star and the bearing on. You need to take the shift star off and then take the bearing off, because you put it in pretty much like that, obviously without the bolt on it, and then you do all the goo-goo stuff there, put it on. It should slip right together, and then you need to make sure that this shift drum aligns with the bearing, which I don't know if you can tell, there's some play there. And get the bearing, get it all pressed together, bolt it all together. There's a clip on the counter shaft that you need to put on, and then you need to put the shift star on. There's no wrong way to put the shift star on. I was a little worried about that. This little dot here comes into an extended notch, and all 5 positions have notches, but one position has an extended notch. That's the only way it fits together. So at least they got you there. That's all I got for you guys today. I'm not even going to record putting the rest of this together because it's been such a disaster. This is not a reliable build at all. This is just my experience. I hope somebody finds this useful.